Welcome to the Mindset Lounge. Hattie, welcome back.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. This is our second pod. This is the first time having someone on again.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
I always have returning guests because they're generally people I just love speaking to.
Yes. Well, our conversation last time was incredible. I got such good feedback. I remember so many people messaging me being like, that was such a good episode. When I mentioned to a few of my friends that I'm going to have you on again, they were like, yes, because the last one was so good.
Shit, now we've got an expectation.
Oh, fuck. You're doing amazing. And today I want to talk about relationships and I guess delve into your relationship, my relationship a little bit. We both have a lot of similarities, but probably lots of differences. And I'm sure you get lots of questions as well. Like I get so many questions every week of clients and my audience and my listeners asking me about my relationship and how I can help theirs. So I thought, what better to have a big episode dedicated to it?
I mean, I could talk about relationships forever. I really am fond of – I notice I have a very deep, I guess, curiosity on how do we make a relationship stay strong and playful and withstanding of all the challenges that we face. I'm really lucky that my parents are still together after 42 years and they really have modeled for me what a healthy relationship looks like. And a healthy relationship still has breakdowns. What the strongest thing about a relationship isn't just the good times. It's how you repair from the hard times. And I feel like because I've had my previous relationship before Coben was quite tumultuous. And it lent me into going, okay, if I don't want to have that experience again, what does the next relationship have to have? Like, what's the foundations? How do we set it up to have strong foundations, strong structure, knowing that structure can still bend in a way. It's like we don't have to be perfect human beings. In fact, we're not. And so I'm fiercely curious about what makes a healthy relationship, what makes a strong relationship from both parties. So when you reached out to me and said we want to talk about relationships, I was like, oh my God, yes, someone I can talk to relationships about. And as I say that, I'm not a psychologist around relationships. So anything I share today is just an opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it's just an experience and an opinion. I am nowhere qualified to give advice on actual relationships, but I can only share what my experience has been and what has worked essentially for me.
Yeah. And I think we're in a day and age now where people crave stories and they want to hear perspective, not so much about the knowledge. And I think that's what's so valuable about podcasts is that we can give our perspective and our opinion and our experience and people can really absorb that and then take what they can from that and apply it to themselves. And so I think when we talk about relationships as well, there's never going to be one size fits all of if you do this, you're going to get this outcome. It's not like dieting where we can say if you're in a deficit, you're going to lose weight. And so when we think about relationships and we think about our perspectives, it's okay, well, how can we take little bits from Hattie's story and Morgan's story and then implement it into my own? So you just got married.
We just got married.
That is crazy. How did you feel?
Surprise wedding.
Yeah, it was a surprise.
It was a surprise wedding. We decided about 3 weeks out from the actual engagement party that we would make it a wedding.
Was your engagement a surprise or did you expect it?
It was a surprise. Yeah. So within the first year of Coben and I being together, we were on our way to go to Emma Dillon's wedding and we were looking for a suit for Coben and he grabbed me by the hand and he said, let's go look at some rings. And I remember being like, what? What the hell? We've just got together like this. And it wasn't like I wasn't ready. I knew that this was the person that I want to be with. But I think I was just like, oh my God, he feels the same way. This is crazy. What the hell? And we went and looked at some rings and he wanted to get an idea of what I liked. He also wanted to kind of remind me of how much things cost. And, from that moment, it was like, okay, I have an idea of what I want to create for her. And he just worked his ass off in the background for, 4 years or 3.5 years to, create what he wanted to. be proud of to bring to me. And so when we were in Japan, it was like such a shock that it took me actually a month to really go, oh my God, this person wants to spend the rest of their life with me. And I find it really interesting because there's a part of me that feels so shocked and I don't know if you have this experience, Morgan, or anyone else listening, but there's a part of me that feels unlovable. There's a part of me that I struggle with that if I tap into her, it's like, I can't believe he wants to marry me with all my flaws. And, it's interesting because I'm aware of her and I was so curious as to how intensely she showed up in that moment. Or for a while, and I really had to say, he loves you, like he loves me. And yes, this is what I want. I want to spend the rest of my life with him. If it was up to me and I had to get down on one knee, I would have done it, years ago. So it was such a beautiful moment, actually. We read love letters to each other and we essentially said the same thing to each other, but in our own words. And it was all about safety and it was all about connection and it was all about building, a world together and, the support, but also the honesty that we have and that we've built together. And then, I have this running joke where I say, I'm his maid, his mistress, his girlfriend, and the cleaning fairy. And I signed off, and with your future wife, not knowing that in that moment he was about to get down on one knee and propose to me.
I love that. How do you navigate when that pops up of that voice in your head that is like, why does he want to be with me? Were you able to, I guess, shift that quite quickly? I know you said it took a month to sort of really sink in, but what was the process of you being like, no, he loves me for me?
I think it was just noticing and naming that to myself, and rather than judging myself and being like, oh my God, there's that voice again, it was like, this is so interesting. Like, how much more evidence, I would say to myself, how much more evidence do you need for this voice to tone down? Like, how much more evidence do I need? We've got a business together, we've got our dog together, we've got our houses, and he's taking you on this trip and gotten on one knee. Like, how much more evidence? And so rather than judging myself for having that part show up, I just met it with some curiosity. I was like, well, what do I need to do to turn this down? Like, let's look at the evidence. Like, you want to look at evidence? Let's go. You can't get any more evidence. I didn't hold a gun to this person's head and be like, you're going to ask me to marry you. But we are a sum of all parts. Like, we have parts of us that show up from childhood or previous relationships. And something that I've learned from a very good friend of mine, Michelle, she's a neuropsychologist, she told me that trauma in relationships can only be healed in relationships, in a safe enough relationship. And that's the tricky thing when we meet something, we've got our own baggage, they've got their own baggage, and then suddenly we meet. And it's often always in a moment that you're not expecting to meet someone. And then you have to open up and share, and you get met with triggers, and unless you do, and like if you don't know how to communicate effectively or communicate at all, it's so hard for those repairs to happen. So that was something that, I've always had in my mind around, okay, what's mine? What needs nurturing? And Coburn was the safest place for me to be able to share, the parts of me. And Evan said that to me, I was like, there's part of me that feels unlovable. And yet here you are loving me. Or like all parts of me, even the parts that are challenging in different moments. And if we think about the way that we love our partners, the way you love Callum, it's not conditional. It's not in only certain conditions. It's only, I only love you when you're like, I love you. I love all of you, even the parts that are challenging. And when we're met with those challenging parts, we practice on giving them grace or compassion or understanding. And that's how we continue to repair and get stronger. And even for ourselves, notice what shows up for us when we're met with those challenging parts.
Yeah. That's a really interesting take, because I guess we hear so often that you can't love somebody if you don't love yourself, and you need to do the self-work first, and you need to be whole before you can enter a relationship. But I love what you've just said about that you can only heal that with more proof in a safe relationship. And I think that almost goes against what so many younger girls at the moment in this like boss babe era are thinking like it's all like I have to be 100% certain in myself and love myself, and it almost feels weird to be like, well, you have that that unlovable part of you that still pops up. We sort of go, well, that should be fixed before we enter a relationship. That's just a really interesting take.
Funnily enough, I feel fiercely independent and lovable on my own. There's certain parts that come out in relationship. And while I agree, you're allowed to be a boss bitch, you're allowed to be a baddie, you're allowed to be all these different things. And it is important that we do work on ourselves individually so we have a level of self-awareness first, because a chaotic mess will only ever meet another chaotic mess, and then you get a toxic bond. And then it is that those extreme highs and those extreme lows, and then people think that's love. But what it really is just this toxicity that has this, adrenaline rush and this, these parts that are like, I guess, yearning to be loved by this person that doesn't truly love them. And it's really tricky. And it's not like we have to come as whole people either. No one is fully whole. Everyone's got their own things to deal with. I'm not a perfect human being. Coben's not. You're not. But the fact that we have values and integrity and we know how we want to show up for ourselves and we also know how we want to show up for others, that's what's important. And I remember before I met Coben, two of my girlfriends and I, we wrote these letters to ourselves. And most people ask themselves, what do I want from someone else in a relationship? Well, I want my partner to be like this. I want my partner to be like this. That's not wrong. It's good to have an idea of how we want the other person to be. But I met it with, how am I going to show up for me and them? How am I going to show up in the next relationship? What did I not like about how I showed up in my previous relationship? Because I can't just blame the other person. I had my role. There's three sides to every story. One person's experience, and then what's actually happening, right? And that's totally fine. Everyone's having their own experience. But I was like, what did I not like about how I showed up here? Because there was many things. And how do I not want that to show up here in this next relationship? And how am I going to notice that? How am I going to notice that pattern? How am I going to minimize that from happening? So before I met Coben, I wanted to get really clear on, well, if I was to enter into a relationship, I'm not going to say yes to anyone because I've just been in a 10-year relationship and I don't have another 10 years to maybe see if this is going to work. It was, okay, I want it to work and I'm not going to take on anyone. But how do I have to show up as well? And I think like it's a really powerful exercise to do because it's a partnership. It's not just what they can do for you. It's how do we do this together?
What would you just say to somebody who is like, in their early 20s and they're battling between like that vulnerability and that being, I want to be like this boss bitch who stands on her own, but also I need to give into the relationship as well?
Gosh, what advice could I give? That's actually a tricky one because I feel like I don't really get asked that type of question from like super young girls. It's generally women in their 30s who are panicking. But I guess to circle it back, I guess what I can come back to is what you say yes to is what you say no to. And I think you have to be really clear again is if you're going to enter into a relationship, you are going to be met with something else taking priority to your effort or to your time. And unless you're really in love to that person, it's going to it's like again, what you say yes to is what you say no to. I think a lot of people enter into relationships feeling like that's the way that they feel safe or that they need to, or that they find it hard to love themselves, and if someone else loves them then they can love themselves. And I feel like that might be something that a lot of young girls who haven't quite found their true maybe power or true independence or true self-love, because in those early 20s, I don't feel like we've got enough repetition. We haven't had enough life challenges yet. And so we look to others to fill those holes, which can be really a bit tricky. So I don't even know if I've answered that question very well, Morgan.
I don't even know the answer myself. You know, I think about my audience. I have such a mix of girls that are like, you know, I'm so good on my own and I don't need a man. And then we've got the other side where it's like we're seeking out somebody to fill our gap. And I think both ends of the spectrum are probably, the extremes are too extreme. We don't want to have these walls up where, you know, I don't need a man. I'm on my own. Like, I'm never going to be vulnerable. But we also don't want to seek that out and really make somebody else dictate our happiness. I think we have to kind of give and take and have moments of vulnerability and allow that in, but also stand true to ourselves and our values. And I guess eventually you do end up finding somebody who can match that, I hope.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you shared that, Morgan, because it gave me a little bit more clarity on what you're asking. And the word that came to my mind was, well, what's the intention? You know, like, why do you want to enter into a partnership? Is it because you feel the need to be loved by someone else in order to love yourself? That's when I would say, there probably is some work to do on yourself. And a lot of that might come from maybe abandonment of your parents. Like, so Esther Perel is one of my favorite people to listen to. And if anyone's never heard of her, go and look her up. She also has a great book called Mating in Captivity. And she says, tell me how you were loved by your parents and I'll tell you how you like to be loved. Because so much of that connection or even intimate relationships, it very much stems from our parents or the closest people that we spent the most time with as children. And so a lot of people, if they felt abandoned by maybe their parents or parent, they will try and seek that. Everything that they do is to be loved by someone else and that feels safe. Yet they will abandon parts of themselves for that relationship. So that's why I ask, like, what's the intention? You can still be a strong, independent woman and have a partner. I'm a strong, independent woman and I still have a partner. Because you will notice the relationships, the difference between the relationships that feel steady and the one that have like earning cycles. And then you've got those avoidant attachment kind of cycles that go on throughout it. So you might notice that there's not much steadiness in a relationship if you're someone that has those abandonment issues, because as soon as they do something that challenges that or triggers that, you're going to go into overdrive. Versus a relationship that you feel steady in yourself and then you meet someone and you get to know them. And of course you can't ignore feeling loved by someone and how that feels. But also there is this incredible energy or feeling that we get when we fully love ourselves. Now, when I say we love ourselves, that's not to dismiss the challenges that we all face day to day or times. Like the conversation we had this morning in Flex Method was, you're allowed to love yourself while working on yourself. You're allowed to love who you are while being frustrated. We have these polarizing experiences. But going and traveling or building a business or just, you know, working on yourself is also really powerful. And that might be something you feel like you need to do because the previous versions of you and other relationships has felt toxic or tumultuous. And you have noticed that it's this really strong ebb and flow. So then it might be, yeah, I do need to go work on myself. And I am okay to love myself and not be loved by someone else. That doesn't mean that I'm not worthy. Doesn't mean that I'm not unlovable either. It just means that I need to fill my own cup first.
I always think about that, filling your own cup first. And I really notice with my relationship with Cal that when I am caring for myself and I'm giving myself grace and I'm giving myself patience, I give Callum that as well. And when I'm not, conversely, same with Callum. Like if I'm not giving myself care and love and patience, I'm so quick to snap at Callum. And even within relationship and not even looking for a relationship, like you're still going to have that of you need to care for yourself. I'm curious whether or not you feel like your relationship with yourself is the most important thing, or if when you get into a long-term relationship, the relationship with the relationship becomes more important. Do you think that yourself will always come first?
I do. And it like just pips it. As how I receive that question is, or what I think about that question is exactly what you shared. If I neglect myself, I don't feel sexier. I don't feel empowered. I don't feel, like I want to be intimate. So the reason we work on ourselves is so we have the power to do those things with our partner, is to be able to hold them. So I think of marriage, it's funny, I think of marriage as something that's very spiritual. So I often share the story of the time that I looked myself in the mirror and I said to myself, I'm going to be devoted to you for the rest of my life. And in that moment, it was like this spiritual, like, I am here for you through the hard, the easy, the lows, the everything. Like, I will not abandon you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to be firm with you, all those things. And when I look at Coben and when I did my vows to Coben, I said, I'm going to be devoted to you. I'm going to be devoted to us. And that feels like, as I'm devoted to myself, I'm devoted to you. As I hold myself to a high standard, I can hold you to that high standard. And so the relationship that we have with ourselves is so important, because when I'm confident in myself, I am playful, I am sexual, intimate, I'm all of these things that are important to me in my partnership. I hold my own in the business. I can look after the household. Like, I feel so powerful. I can do all the hats or all the characters that I play in my house with Coben. And it keeps it playful and it keeps it curious. If I abandon myself, or if I put myself on the low priority list, I don't feel capable to do those. It feels like I'm trudging through mud. I'm not as playful. I'm not as intimate. And I know that. So I think, again, you're allowed to, we have two hands, one for ourselves, one for the relationships that are important to us.
That in itself is such a good takeaway, and it's so, so important. And that doesn't just revolve around your intimate relationships. That really can be applied to everything, even business partnerships or friendships. If you're mean to yourself, it's going to be easier to be mean to others. And if you're really patient and kind and loving and confident, you're going to step up and also be the mirror for the other person to also be that as well. I think that's what me and Cal do really well. Is I was thinking about, like, how do we push each other to be better, or like be our best selves? And we never are actively like, you need to be better. But by myself, or by Callum being his best self and confident and really being powerful, it makes me level up into that power as well. Like, I would never cower down when Callum's in this beautiful moment. And I think it would be the exact same for you and Coben, right? Like, you would kind of raise each other up in that sense as well.
Yeah, you become enrolled by them.
Yeah.
And they do the same. And I think, well, that's what a confident relationship is. It's some people, they'll pull their partner down because they see their partner shifting or evolving or becoming confident or, changing. And again, it's just changing what you were relating to. And that can be really hard when someone starts to work on themselves. And one of my favorite sayings is, you can't make a flower grow faster by pulling on it. And a lot of people think that if they're evolving, they have to make their partner. It's like, we can't make anyone do anything, but you can show them what self-development looks like by that confidence, by that independence and that ability to go out in the world. And your partner's either going to be enrolled in that or they're going to not. And that will determine whether you guys are going to grow together or whether you're going to grow apart. And a confident relationship is, we grow independently, but we also grow together. And asking each other questions. Like, I am a serial question asker. On my walks with Coben, I ask him, what have you learned about yourself, lady? What are you curious about? What's your 5 years looking like? What have you learnt today? How can I show up better as a partner? If there was anything that you would give me feedback on, what would be like? I'm open to feedback. And I think if you're not asking each other questions consistently, then all you're doing is assuming. And you're not continuing to learn, and you're not continuing to grow. And it's not you have to ask them every day, but I think it's important to have pockets that you're asking, like, hey, how do we connect? Like, is this how we still connect? Like when I asked you last week, I'm like, what do you and Cal do to connect? And there were so many things that you shared, Morgan, last week that I haven't stopped thinking about. And there was definitely the one around you, like, I don't text Cal. I talk to him. That's connection to me. And I was like, shit, I send Coben so many bloody, and I was like, can I adopt that? I was wondering if I could adopt that. And I think that's really beautiful, because you're leaving these moments to be able to sit with that person and say, hey, this is how my day has gone, or can I check in with you? Or, and you're really sitting there and engaging in the conversation instead of just, doing it by text and all that kind of stuff. So everyone's got their own way of doing things, but I think a really beautiful thing to tune into yourselves and go, well, where in our day is play, or where in our day is curiosity, or when in our weeks are we checking in with ourselves and making sure, we're still on the same path at the moment.
Yeah, it's funny, when I went home to Cal that afternoon, I said, oh, Hattie asked me about my love languages, and he said, yours is connection. And I was like, oh, you knew faster than I knew. And it's true. I think like that's a really big, and everyone's going to have their own things, but I think that really is important to me. And having that time to ask the questions and actually sit down and really like dissect that. Have you experienced times in your relationships, either with Coben or in past relationships, where you have started to kind of lose yourself or lose track of where the relationship is, or the values, and have been able to come back to it? Or conversely, it's kind of turned into a bigger thing?
Definitely in my previous relationship, that relationship was my greatest teacher, and I'm so grateful for it. It was at times so messy, and at other times so deep and passionate, but it had its highest highs and its lowest lows. But I learned so much from that relationship in how I didn't want things to be, and the didn't want was so easy to create with Coben. We are such good communicators with each other now that we are constantly like checking in, and it wasn't always like that. Like Coben, when I first met Coben, he didn't say much. And I essentially had to give him an ultimatum at one point, being like, hey, if you're not going to like have deep conversations with me, like I can kind of do this thing with someone else. And, he's so articulate and he's so deep, but he just never had that environment. Whereas when I look at my previous relationship before that, I was 21 when I first met that partner, and he was in his just turned 30. There was such a big gap in age, but also in maturity. I didn't have the voice I have now. I didn't know how to effectively communicate or listen. I also pedal-stooled that person, which is really unhealthy. I'm so in love with Coben, but he's not above me. He is with me. And that's powerful. I think we sometimes think if I pedal stool them, it's better. It's like, that means you put yourself below that person. That means you bend your boundaries. That means you don't speak your needs. That means there's going to be breaking in bonds, bending of boundaries, and this resentment will build up. And like I said, I didn't have the skills yet. But over that, 8 or 9 year relationship, like that, again, as I got older, as I noticed, I am not, honoring myself because I'm still scared of this person. And I let a lot of things go and slide. And again, beautiful moments. I do not want to dismiss that relationship, and I don't want to like shit on it in any way. That's the right way. It's like, it taught me so much, and there were so many great moments to it. And actually the relationship that I have now, which is unbelievable, it stemmed from the lessons of that. So I'm super grateful. But Coben and I have a really healthy way of communicating. We voice each other's needs so they get met. We problem solve. We have a very solid repair system. And we need that because we work together and we live together. And it's so funny because if I don't see him in a day, I miss him terribly. I'll get to the end of the day and I'm like, I haven't seen you all day. Tell me how it was. Like, and I miss you so much. And I'm so grateful because I'm like, you're my favorite person in this whole world. You're so many things to me, except for a female friendship, but you're everything outside of that. Like, you're someone I trust with my life. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to cultivate. And it takes both people to be able to do that.
What were the signs that you noticed in the previous relationship that you were starting to lose yourself or veer away from your values?
I never spoke my needs.
What does that look like in a real day-to-day life? Or what does it look like in your relationship now with Coben? I'm thinking about my listeners who want like that real tangible, like, how can I speak my needs? Are you sitting down with Coben and being like, or in the previous relationship when you weren't, you wanted something but you weren't able to ask for it?
It could be asking. It could be sharing how you feel. It could be sharing, maybe something triggered you and you really want to say what's happened. You really want to name a part of you that's feeling this intensity. And you want to name like how and where it came from and say, I just want to know, like, is this evidence real? Or am I seeing a perspective from a part that is just a little bit triggered? And so being able to talk like that as well, because most of the time we get triggered by someone, or most of the time we want to speak our needs, not most, but all, not all, but most, is there's a part of us that feels a little bit stuck, uncertain, or not safe. And if we don't voice that, just to share what our experience is in that moment, then we can resent ourselves or resent them. Or we create a deeper story about what's actually happening. And then we put assumptions. And when we assume, right, that no longer gives that person the opportunity to say, oh, like, thanks so much for sharing that with me. I can see how that landed for you. That actually makes a lot of sense. No, my perspective was this. No, I did it for this. Here, take a look at this. And so if you can't do that, then all you're doing is ruminating. So that's one way of voicing needs. Or when, I know a lot of people out there, they asking for help from their partner can be really challenging, and saying like, hey, are you able to help me here? Or do you mind if we do things like this? Or can you help me over here? Or when I speak to you, do you mind putting your phone down? I actually notice that I feel a little bit disconnected when I'm trying to talk to you and you're on your phone. So things like that can be really tricky. If you've got multiple partnerships within a partnership, so, business, you've got a business together, being able to say, can I ask you something about work? Or do you mind if we switch for a second so we can have this conversation here? Or things like that where you kind of compartmentalize things and hold things down and like a, what's the word? Like a come full circle, or like close it down and make sure everything's okay. That's really important.
I think it's so important to be able to express how you feel, because often the other person just doesn't know. And we think that they think a certain thing, and as you said, you assume that they know what you're thinking and they've shut it down. And often that's not the case. And I guess we could look at that in the same sense of everything is like putting in reps. It's practice, and sometimes it's scary. I was thinking about what makes Callum and my relationship so good is that we are able to have really hard conversations with ourselves and then with other people. But that's only come through repetition and knowing that it's safe to do so. Like, I'm sure now when you reach out to Coben, you feel safe because the last time didn't end bad. It ended well. It ended with success and improvement. And so every time you do it and it ends, well, even if it doesn't end well, it's still practice to be able to be like, I'm going to actually say what I feel. But having that same conversation with yourself is really important as well. Like, often we don't even know what our needs are, and being able to actually think about that and be like, well, what do I want? Like, how do I genuinely feel about this? I notice it triggered me, but where is this going? What do I actually crave from this scenario? Like, when you say about the phone thing, like when my partner's on my phone, I feel icky, but like, why? Is it because I feel like I'm trying to talk to him and he's not listening? Or I also do the same and I'm realizing it. Like, I guess having those conversations with yourself as well.
You and I spoke about love languages last week, and one of my love languages is words of affirmation. And it's not, I love you, you're amazing, even though I do love that. It's the ability to have hard conversations with people that you love. And we're not just talking about intimate relationships. I'm talking about like all friendships. When a friend can come to you and say, hey, Morgan, is it okay if I talk to you about something that's been on my mind? I love you so much that I just want to clear this air. And they'll say, when you did this last week, I just noticed that the way I received that was like this. And I noticed that I feel a little bit uncomfortable and I really want to talk to you about it because you really mean something to me. When I have had hard conversations with best friends, Coben, my parents, sister, I always say to them, thank you so much for having that conversation with me. You love me enough to share what's going on for you deeply. You love me enough to hold me to a standard. You love me enough to share what your perspective is. And you're giving me the opportunity to share mine, how actually it was meant to land, or I'm so sorry, I didn't think of it like this, or oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I'm sorry, I read this differently. Or, you know, when you come to someone and you tell them honestly how you feel, and it's not you make me feel this way, because that's not true. We make ourselves feel that way from our own stories. But that doesn't mean we don't have an uncomfortable feeling. That's why we're having the conversation. And you give each other the opportunity to share your truth. That is love. That is friendship. That is repairing. That is, we're going to talk about now. We're going to hear each other's perspective. We're going to say, I love you deeply. Thank you so much for that. And what are we going to do now? And I think that's really important. Every time Coben and I have had hard conversations, I've said, baby, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I just learned a little bit more about you. God, that made me feel uncomfortable, but I am so proud that we just did that. And it's like the same with failure. If we acknowledge and praise failure because it's just a lesson, and we acknowledge and praise hard conversations, whether they're with ourselves, like when do we feel empowered? When we've held a freaking mirror to ourselves, when we've had that conversation, when we then had the hard conversation with someone who is important to us. And it's a practice, it's a skill, because there's a skill between actively listening and passively listening and being able to actually hear someone's perspective and go, I can understand how that landed for you, and I'm so sorry, that was not my intention.
I think when you have that hard conversation, you realize in that moment that that person cares about the relationship enough. If they don't want to have that hard conversation, they obviously don't care about it kind of is like they don't care about the relationship. And are you more prepared to throw away a relationship or have the hard conversation? And when you have that hard conversation, no matter how bad it feels, you know that they've chosen that over abandoning the relationship.
One of the biggest mistakes I made in my last relationship, and this is kind of where I got it from, was I spoke to all my friends about my problems in my relationship and I never spoke to him. And that's so unfair on him and on the relationship. They were never going to solve my problems. I just then painted this person in a terrible light. And I didn't speak my needs. I didn't get resolved. I resented. He went off and kept doing this thing. I didn't say anything. And I just said everything to everyone else. And so I remember being like, I'm not going to do that again. And so with Coben now, I will be like, baby, can I speak to you about something? Like, you know, tonality is really important. It's not just what we say, it's how we say it. And there are times where I'm like, okay, what's the outcome I want to achieve here? Is it to just let him know how I feel, or is there something that we want to move together? And so before you speak, I think it's really important to take your time. And if you're in a really heated moment, write out everything you want to say, read it back and ask yourself, is all of this useful? Like, am I trying to talk to this person to like rip into them, or am I actually trying to say, hey, like this is how it landed for me. This is the evidence I'm collecting. It might be a part of me, but I notice it showing up. Can we talk about it? And being able to share, like, well, what's the thing that you want to get across? What would you like them to understand? But then also, what's the repair going to be? Because there's a really big difference for just yelling at them and then saying things that aren't actually going to be useful and aren't going to improve the repair system, to going, okay, I understand, I feel a lot of whatever I'm feeling right now, but what's the outcome I want to achieve? Well, I want to repair this. I don't want this to happen again. So I've got to name it, but I'm also not going to tell this person what to do. I'm going to show them with care. So I think that's, again, like communication is such a skill. And as you said, it's like just more reps under the tank. You're going to learn from the conversations that didn't go so well, and then you can ask yourself, like, how could I do that better? Or even with your partner, after go, okay, how, is there a better way that we can communicate?
Knowing what the outcome is that you want before going into a conversation is so pivotal. Because if you are going, what is it? Do you want to just voice it? Do you want to solve it? Are we fixing the problem, or are we talking about it? Am I airing this out? And this just sparked something within myself and Callum, is that we used to sort of have these conversations where I would be struggling, like maybe I was having like a lot of anxiety, and I would sort of like voice what's going on, and he was so quick to want to fix. And all I needed in that moment was for him to just listen. And it took me so long to realize that, like, I needed to tell him that that's what I wanted. And so now when we go into things like that, if I'm having a bad day, I'm feeling upset or whatever, I will just say to him, Cal, I just need you to listen to me now. Or it's the alternative is like, Cal, I want you to help me come up with a solution. And that's massive. And I think that if you don't have that communication when it's arguing or whatever, it gets lost.
I say to Kerwin, do you want me to be a space, or do you want my opinion? Or do you want my advice? He'll say, just be a space. I'm like, okay. And if I ever want to ask a question, I'll say, can I ask you a question? I always do a little bit of a check-in because, and he does the same for me. It's like, do you want me to be a space, or do you want me to help you? And originally you might say, I just want to be a space. And then after you've said everything out loud and your brain's been able to anchor to your language, you might go, am I hearing this right? Or can I have your perspective? Or what would you do in this instance? So it gives that power to that moment.
Absolutely. I always think about like when I was like, if I was so feeling really anxious, and I'd just be like, and Cal like, what are we going to do to fix this? And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I need to get it out. Literally. But I realized that I needed to get it out, and it meant getting more out than the first sentence. And I think we had Callum's such like a fixer in that sense that as soon as something came out, he was like, what are we going to do to move through this? And I realized I just needed to there was a lot more coming out. But even I like what you said about writing it down, and that can be regardless of if it's like a heated moment or not. Maybe what I could have done in those scenarios is like written it all out beforehand and really like digested it first, and then been able to take it out and speak it out to Cal, because a lot of the time it was like one thing that turned into a whole nother thing. Yeah.
Medusa.
What did you say, Medusa?
Medusa. You know, Medusa, I always use Medusa as an analogy for our thoughts. So Medusa, have you heard of her? She's like a Greek god. Oh, there we go. Yeah. One thought and then the other and the other and the other. And that's like, now we're overwhelmed. It's like Medusa just rears her head. That's what anxiety is to me in my mind. Overwhelmed anxiety.
How do you describe anxiety? Just that?
Overwhelm. Many stories, many thoughts, many ruminations, many holes. Don't know where to start, feeling stuck.
Have you experienced anxiety in your relationship, having anxious thoughts about where is it going to go? Or
not where is it going to go, but in the beginning when we didn't have the solid foundations we had now, there was a lot of anxiety. We had a lot of repairing to do. We didn't start as a fairy tale. And I think half my challenge or my issue was the fact that in my mind, I thought it was going to start as this beautiful fairy tale, but it wasn't. And it's funny, most people love the first 6 months of being with someone. That was not my favorite time with Coben, but it is now because it's so deep. It's just, if I was to tell you like everything I want in a relationship, it is what it is now, but it definitely didn't start that way. And there was lots of hard and honest conversations with each other. Yeah, and there was a lot of trust that had to be built and repairing that had to be done for both of us. And yeah, it was not the steadiness, but we knew what each other's roles were for each other. And we knew that there was going to be a climb that we would have to do together. And so I think just that belief is really important. Like the intention was set. We knew there was going to be things that we had to do for each other and with each other. So without trust, there is no relationship. And I think the hardest thing is, the thing that I always remember is like, no one's a perfect human being. Not me, not anyone. And with that, I give grace to mistakes that people make. But people will show you who they are. And they don't have to tell you who they are. And so you have to look at the showing. And even though we didn't start off perfectly, it was far from that. I mean, he wrote to me in letters, which I loved, but he didn't just write to me, he showed me. And because that was like, okay, why did I persevere through this tricky part in the beginning? And it was like, there was something about this person that I knew that he just needed like almost like more nurturing or steadier people around him. Even if I look at who he is now to who he was and the people that he surrounded himself with, and I'm not going to say these are bad people at all. It's just everyone in that moment of their life, they were young and it was chaotic. And so, of course, he was around yes people all the time. And I was probably the only person that came in and challenged him. So I was like, I'm 8 years older than you. I'm not putting up with this stuff. I was like, you want to go do this, you can do this to someone else. Here's what I want. And I'm not going to force you to do anything. I literally was like, this is how it's going to be. We laugh about it. I'm like, this is how it's going to be. You're in or you're not. And if you're not, that's fine. But this is where the road ends. And I didn't have to make him do anything. He chose to. And I think he chose to because he knew that he wasn't living with the integrity that he's capable of.
How did you have the confidence to say that?
Honestly, I was just like, I am not putting up with this shit. It was just like, it was like a hard no. It was like, I know where I've come from and I'm not doing that again. So even if as I say that, it was like, it's such a hard no. And again, it's like, but there was something about this person that I was like, I'm trusting that we're going to be okay.
Well, you could have so easily left that relationship. You could have so easily been like, not for me, see you later. But the fact that you were able to have that conversation shows that you were willing. And I think the same with me and Cal. Like we had a beautiful start where we just kind of connected really closely, but we didn't
How'd you guys meet?
We just worked at the same gym. But I wasn't
Who hit on who?
See, the thing is, it wasn't like a really lovey, intense relationship at the start, and we kind of built that. We were like friends, quite friendly. And Callum's so nonchalant, everyone will know that already. But I would be like, is he interested in me at all? Like, 'cause I had no idea, and I had to sort of say the same thing, like, what's going on here? Like, is this happening? I need this to be shown.
Yeah.
But it was the same because I knew there was something in me that was like, we have the same values. I really feel like I can see this. I could have so easily just been like, this guy's not interested in me and just ghosted him. But I really felt that and I wanted to have those hard conversations, and really interestingly brought Callum to life. And he was very similar in the sense that, or he wasn't like mucking around, but he was not very deep at all. He was quite a shallow person, and I'm so able to say that now because he's so deep now. But I had to really nurture that out of him as well. And I think it's interesting because when I look at our relationship, I feel like, we had to do a lot of work at the start. And I think I had a belief that if it was the right person, it would just
click.
Yeah.
And everything would be easy. And
yeah.
And
I really was like, there's like daily practice that we have to work at to make this happen. And that was a really big moment for me to realize that it wasn't like, I always thought, if it was the right person, you don't have to try. And learning that I had to try, and trying makes the relationship significantly better was so awesome for me.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, it's the same with ourselves. Like, if we didn't try with ourselves, we're not going to get anywhere. It's not fulfilling. It's not playful. It's not curious. It hasn't got potential. There's no capabilities. It's like, it is literally the same. And, you know, people talk about, you know, there's two sides to what people talk about in relationships. It's like, it's hard work or it requires work. And then people are like, no, if you're in love, it's easy. I'm like, there's easy moments. And almost because you love that person, it makes the hard times still manageable. You love that person and you work through it because you're like, this person is worth it. I'm willing to go to war with you, right? And so that's the same for ourselves. It's like, if we abandon ourselves at any hard moment, we will never become who we're meant to be. Relationships are the same. That's why when I looked at COVID, I'm like, I'm going to be not just devoted to you, but devoted to us in what that looks like. And it feels like a really beautiful, for me, it's like, it feels so like this embodiment. I was like so spiritual, this full connection with this person. It's not just what we think we should be and that we think we should get married. It's like, no, I'm committed to you from this, like, I've been committed to you from the moment I met you, really, and us and what we're going to work through. So it does require work always, because it's so easy to get comfortable and it's so easy to get stale, right? Yeah. So playful and being adventurous is a really important thing. And when I listen to a lot of the psychologists around, like, how do you make a long-term marriage or partnership be successful? You don't just do things that you always do together. You go and do things that you haven't done together. Like, that adventurous side is also really important, you know, and a part of communication is also sharing what you like and in intimate moments. Like, that's, how do you keep that alive? It's like being playful, sharing what you like, being curious. Like, there's so many layers to having a successful relationship. And look, Cobe and I, we're still in our early years, but I am fiercely determined to keep it as passionate as I can and playful and continue to grow with this person.
I love that you've kind of relayed that from the relationship to yourself, and you have to be passionate about yourself and your own life as well. And I love that. If you could kind of break down a deep and really fulfilling relationship into like 3 pillars, what would you say are like the 3 core things that are going to make it?
I mean, I think like communication. Communication is the bridge to connection. So effective communication is really important. I think there has to be, like, there's a intimate side, which is like a physical. I think there needs to be an intimate side, which is communication, talking, speaking, getting to know each other. And then I think there also has to be, you know, like this playful and adventurous side, because everything in between that is kind of like mundane. It's like just doing the things together. And if you're a partnership with kids, like, those other 3 pillars are almost more important, like are so important actually, that communication, that deep and intimate level, and that playful and adventure. And you've got to do that with the very little energy you have left over for the rest of the day after being with kids.
The kids coming into it is just a whole different story that neither of us have, you know, any way of speaking about. And we see our friends having children, and I think, wow, what a different dynamic that's going to create. What are some things that you guys do that are like consistent things that you do throughout the week, throughout the day, to keep that playfulness and that like the curiosity alive? Because you do also work together. You both are quite disciplined, regimented people within like bodybuilding. And I've seen this, especially, I mean, in prep and out of prep, it's quite different, but myself and Callum are really bad for just losing that when we get so stuck in our own pursuit. So what are some things that you would anchor back to keep that all alive?
I have a bare minimum of intimacy in the week, and it's like 4 days a week. Anything less than that is like, what is going on? So that's, I think, because Kobe and I are quite, I guess we're quite sexual people, to be honest. That's something that's like constantly in the forefront of my mind. It's like, where in the day can we inject that or some play? We do a walk every afternoon and it's phone free. We see you often on there. And we're either give each other space or we ask each other questions about each other throughout the day. I think, look, Kobe and I are really playful. It's almost hard not to have that in a day. So.
Is it the same in prep?
Even in prep. I don't lose my libido. I will tell you a funny story though. When we first prepped together and Coben 6 weeks out, like guys will lose their libido like 12 weeks out. And he did a really great job of maintaining it till about 6 weeks out. And when I would, start initiating sex and he would be like, I've got nothing. Like, I would cry. This has happened on a few occasions when he had pneumonia and I tried to have sex with him and he's like having a coughing attack and I start crying and he's like, I can't breathe. It's not anything to do with you. I'd be like, is it you don't find me attractive anymore? And so in prep, that was like quite hard. And he's like, call Anthony, tell them that this is normal, And I had to call Anthony, one of our best friends, and be like, is this normal? He's like, oh, Hattie, I've lost mine 12 weeks out. I was like, oh my God, poor Mel. Sorry, I'm throwing everyone on the bus here. But we learned other ways to communicate. We made a point of hugging and kissing and holding hands and talking. So we managed to find a way to make that work. And it is like in moments like when we're really deep, like I go to bed earlier than Coben. Like I'm like a nana at night. So sometimes our schedules are different. I wake Coben up wanting to have sex. He wants to go to bed wanting to have sex. And then there's everything in between. And so it is like the fact that we're both very playful, and that's something that I think is just very important to both of us, just naturally. That side of things makes things easy.
I think as someone who I would say I'm not that way inclined, I don't think I really ever have been, but I think especially with my hormone journey being so irregular, I have been the kind of person who's quite not interested. But I have really noticed if I'm really stuck in my head, I lose it all, that playfulness, that curiosity, that intimacy very quickly. And so for me, as someone who it doesn't come naturally, I have to really work on being really present and grounded and calm in my day-to-day. Otherwise, I get way too caught up in my head and it is very quick to go. So I think even like just for people listening, like being present and, having that time with your partner where you can go and be without your phones and all of this is also going to help you have that curiosity and that playfulness within the relationship. And I guess, circling back to even at the start where we were talking about loving yourself and being kind to yourself, you're going to be kind to others. And you said it yourself, if you're got so much negative self-talk, self-hatred, you're not going to want to open up and have that intimate time with Coben because you're going to be, again, stuck inside your head.
Yeah, it just circles back to, you asked me what's most important, myself or Coben. It's like, well, essentially I'm the middle of the flower, right? And so, again, it's like I will wear things around the house knowing that is going to prompt him. I would do that on purpose. I'm like, I know you're busy, but I want to get busy. So I'm going to get my hair nice. I'll wear a little dress. I'll do those things. But I wouldn't do that if I didn't feel good about myself. So that is why, like, you're not selfish for working on yourself. Actually, you're the middle of the flower. All your petals are all the priorities and things that pull at you every single day. The middle of the flower is not healthy. Neither of those things. So it is important to prioritize yourself. And I'm not saying that I feel amazing all the time. Like, I'm a human being like everyone else. But I'll notice when I don't. And I also notice that I don't feel like myself. And when I don't feel like myself, it's like, oh, I notice all the other things that aren't at the forefront of my mind. But as soon as I feel regulated or as soon as I feel playful, it's like, oh, we're back. Okay, let's go and connect and let's do all those things. So we're human beings. We're complex creatures. There's highs and lows within ourselves. So You bet there's going to be highs and lows with everything outside of us. So I think it's the most important thing is just to like be able to notice and have a level of self-awareness and to be able to go to things like journaling or conversations or spaces and places where you can share how you feel. And so you can, hopefully turn that around and make things that are priority and important to you within your relationship, but also within yourself, something that you actually action on.
I think when I think about this whole conversation, you've just encapsulated that really well, of that you need to have a strong sense of self and self-awareness. And we also need to have a strong sense of this person. If you're in a relationship, this is the person I want to work with, and I want to be better for them, and I want to be that mirror so that they can be better as well. And if you're not in a relationship, doing all of that is going to attract the right person at the end of the day anyway.
Yeah, your partnership. I'm a massive fan of like Layla and Alex Hormozy, and they talk about this a lot. They talk about how important your spouse is, how important the partnership that you enter into is so important, because they are going to be your biggest cheerleader, but they're also going to be your biggest supporter. They're going to be the ones that are willing to have hard conversations with you, that are aligning you with what you said you want to do. And in vice versa, the partnership is that you do the same. And they're the person that will, like I said, go to war with you. They will back you 100%. They will be there for you every way, shape or form. And so what you say yes to is what you say no to. If you're saying yes to a relationship that probably isn't that healthy, or isn't someone that you're going to see yourself with in 5 years' time, you're probably better off just parking that one. Because, and I'm not saying don't go out and have fun. If you're in your 20s, do whatever you want, because when you settle down, you settle down. And that's not bad at all. But it's entering into those partnerships that are going to take up your time. They're going to take up your energy. They're going to take up your space. They have to be worth it.
Well, it's the most important, thing you have in your life is your relationship, because they're the people, they're your environment, and you are what your environment is. And I guess it's really interesting though, because we want to be this ideal person, but as you said, you and Coben started not so, you weren't your best selves, and you grew. And so it's about, I guess, when you find the right person that you want to build with, it will work. But I have a question that I ask everyone at the end of the podcast, and we can kind of relate this to relationships. If you could leave this world with just one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, you should ask me this at the beginning so I didn't think about it. Oh, gosh. One piece of advice, what would it be? I guess it wouldn't be advice, but more of the most important relationship you have is with yourself, and it sets the tone for others. And your mindset is your most valuable tool. It determines what you do and don't do. So rather than give it advice, more of a reflection piece of why it is so important that you focus on your mind and focus on your relationship, because it sets the tone for how you're going to essentially live your life.
Yeah. How you do one thing is how you do everything, and how you have a relationship with yourself is how you're going to have a relationship with everybody, your intimate partner, people you meet on the streets. Everything is a reflection of how you feel inside. And I guess when you love yourself and you give yourself grace and you have hard conversations, you're going to be kinder and happier and more positive, and you're going to reflect that. And hey, who knows who you're going to impact? You might talk to somebody at the grocery store because you're feeling good and you're feeling positive, and you spread that positivity, and it goes a long way, not just with your intimate partners, but with everybody you meet. So I love that, because I think that's the key to everything.
That's such a big question to ask someone right at the end of a podcast.
I know. I always think about my one piece of advice, and it changes every day.
What's the one for today?
It would be very similar. It's that if you can't treat yourself with love and kindness, you aren't going to be able to treat other people. And treating yourself with love isn't loving yourself and wholeheartedly whatever, but it's if you can't practice giving yourself grace, I really don't think it's easy to give everybody else grace either. So I think that's really important. But Hattie, thank you so much for coming on. You have been such a light in my life. I loved our last episode and I love this one. It's been very different, and I was nervous going into it because I don't have conversations like this on the pod. And you and I are both in our era of really stepping out of our comfort zone.
Wifeys, soon to be wifey.
Wifeys. Yeah. But you're doing an amazing job. What's on the horizon for you at the moment?
I mean, I've stepped into the podcast space, which I admire you for, and I had you on last week, and I literally walked away from that conversation. I messaged Cope and I was like, just had such a good conversation with Morgan. You're so easy and you're so electric. So I guess sharpening my skill at becoming a better storyteller and a better speaker. And so working on the podcast, but also continuing to grow Flex Method, which is always, really fun, but also a challenge. I really love the community spaces. I really love educating women and girls. I feel like I very much thrive in those types of situations. And, one of the topics that we spoke about today was on the 3 Ps. What are the things you're passionate about and give you purpose? What leaves you feeling powerless and what leaves you feeling powerful? And it's such a cool kind of concept to ask ourselves, because at the end of the day, we know, when you know what your purpose is, when you know what you're passionate about, it gives you this fire, gives you meaning. And then when you know what leaves you feeling powerless, they're the actions that we're trying to minimize, or they're the behaviors we're trying to, change. So that level of self-awareness is, okay, well, if we know what we're passionate about, we know what our purpose is, but we know what leaves us feeling powerless. And on the reflection is what leaves us feeling powerful. It's always the antidote to what we're feeling powerless with. So I just love having deep conversations. I loved this conversation today. I will talk about relationships. Like I said, I'm not a psychologist, but I can definitely share the shitty experiences that I've had, all the lessons that I've learned into what I have today, which is something so beautiful. And we all have our own version of what that might be. But communication, everyone, effective communication is what drives connection. That would be my biggest advice to everyone.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, guys. If you love this episode, please follow, subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. But it really means the world to give us a 5-star review. But I will see you all in the next episode. Bye.